Welcome to Critical Junction Episode 9. I'm Mark.
I am Luke.
I'm Jill.
And joining us today is our special guest, Phil. Hey, Phil, thanks for being here.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
All right, so today we are talking about Ancient Aliens, both the TV show and the so-called theory. Just to give everyone kind of a rundown of what the quote-unquote theory is. According to ancient alien theorists, extraterrestrials with superior knowledge of science and engineering landed on Earth thousands of years ago, sharing their experience with early civilizations and forever changing the course of human history. Right, so, thoughts on that? Jill, what do you think? Is this something that might be plausible, or is it total fucking bunk?
I'm pretty much thinking it's total fucking bunk. Yeah.
Good start. Okay, Luke?
Start. Okay, well, I would like to... I have an agenda here, and what I'd like to see is if you guys think that there's a possibility that there are ancient aliens out there in general, because we are a very young planet in the galaxy, right?
Sure.
So I think I'm of the belief that it makes sense that there would be other civilizations out there in space that are way older than us. You know, it makes sense to me that there are actually ancient aliens. There are ancient aliens. This is.
I don't think that's a stretch.
That's not a stretch.
Yeah, no, that's something we can safely. Yeah, I don't have any qualms with the idea that there might be other intelligent civilizations somewhere in the universe. I just don't think that there's enough evidence to say that any of them have visited Earth.
Okay.
And I think I've also heard that mathematically, it's a stretch to say, even if there are thousands of other intelligent civilizations out there, it's a stretch to say that they lived as an intelligent civilization with space travel at exactly the same time as we were aware enough to see them or to understand what they are, you know, and for them to actually make it here. I don't know. It seems like
we'll make it here with the technology that we know of at this point. Sorry.
Yeah, because I mean, with the vastness of the universe, you know, there's a lot of ground to cover. There's a lot of
empty space.
There's a lot of empty space. So I mean, there could be thousands out there. There's just no way for either of them to ever come into contact with each other without something much longer than maybe even a billion years or something.
Well, you think about it, technologically, how far we've come in the last 100 years. To think that the Wright brothers flew at Kitty Hawk, I guess that was at the turn of the 20th century, early 20th century, and in less than 100 years of their having accomplished that, we had people on the moon. That's within 100 years of human technological evolution. So if you consider the possibility of a technologized culture that is possibly thousands, hundreds of thousands, or possibly even millions of years ahead of us technologically, I mean, I think, you know, the possibilities there are simply inconceivable for us. I mean, we cannot imagine, you know,
that's a good point.
What capabilities such an evolved culture or species would have.
At the same time, I kind of feel like the status of human civilization is very precarious, and while we can get technologically advanced in a very short period of time, cosmically speaking, we can also kind of blink out of existence.
Absolutely.
Much
very
quicker.
Soon.
Soon. Yeah. I mean, depending on how pessimistic you are.
Well, that raises a couple of things. Like what you're describing is the theory that's, I think, Stephen Hawking kind of he's calling it the Great Filter, in that there are a certain number of civilizations that come into existence, but there are only, of those civilizations, a certain amount that are able to overcome or circumvent their own possibility of self-annihilation.
Right.
And of those few that are able to survive those calamities, there are still even fewer who are able to make it into interstellar space.
Right.
And of those that make it to interstellar space, how many are able to travel the vast
intergalactic space?
Exactly. Who would eventually end up here, right?
Right.
So the odds of an alien civilization existing, and this is a Fermi paradox, are statistically very high. However, the evidence for any civilization existing are Yeah, there is no evidence to suggest
Right.
that there is an extraterrestrial civilization that's technologically advanced enough to visit Earth.
I would actually, I would add to that. I said there's no evidence that you are aware of.
Sure.
Yeah. Sorry, it might seem like
I think
I'm like a minor
that's kind of
distinction.
I'm just going to say,
That's-
aha!
no, but I think that's understood about anything we acknowledge we have no evidence
Of course, yes,
Right.
Mhm.
yes.
It's kind of
That's
Kinda goes with
that's
us.
the
Well, that's-
inherent problem
now-
with the ancient aliens theory is that
It's-
there is no evidence at the moment to suggest that there has been an alien civilization that came to Earth and influenced our evolution.
I disagree with that. If you were to check out certain ancient Sumerian writings, for example, the Sumerians talk a lot about the gods, quote unquote, having come down from the skies and brought various type technologies. I think irrigation technologies. Listen, I don't know what technologies, if any, would have been presented to the Sumerians by these sky gods, and I'm by no means an authority on Sumerian culture, but I know that there are commonly quoted, often quoted writings, ancient Sumerian writings that do discuss this mingling of human and extraterrestrial cultures, essentially.
But just because an ancient civilization wrote something in an ancient text doesn't necessarily mean that it was aliens.
Not necessarily, but even if you look at the Bible and the Bible's mention of the Nephilim being an intelligent race of beings other than man, who did apparently, according to the Bible, exist on Earth at the same time as humans. And if I'm not mistaken, the Nephilim lusted after the daughters of men. And if I'm not mistaken, according to the Bible, the Nephilim ultimately did breed with the daughters of men.
Is the Bible a historically accurate document?
It's not a historically accurate a document by any means. It's not taken that way. But when you start looking at these patterns that emerge in various ancient cultures, this is a motif that's come up in Sumerian culture. It's a motif that comes up in the Bible. It's a motif that comes up in other disparate cultures that you would think never really had the chance to intermingle. Like the Mayans, for example, also had these ancient teachings of sky gods who came down and mingled with their culture.
How is that evidence?
No, I'm not. I'm not saying this is evidence.
Well, that's what we're looking for, isn't it? Like we're
Well, that's
looking.
what
But
you're looking for.
we're not experts. I mean, I'm not an archaeologist.
Of course not.
You're not a linguist. You know, we're laymen, right? We're laymen discussing information that is available to us as laymen.
But there is the problem of recognizing evidence as evidence.
How do you mean?
Well, in the sense that there may very well be evidence that we're just not recognizing as evidence, like all of these things here. You know, in art, you'd mentioned the art and the painting.
Of course, yeah. There's a number of paintings from the Renaissance and Middle Ages that in which these flying objects, these celestial objects, figure quite prominently. I don't know if there's a visual sort of if you guys put any visuals up with your podcast, but they're certainly very easy paintings to find, and there's
I've heard
several of them.
I've seen some of these paintings
course.
with them, and a lot of the time it's just a misunderstanding of the symbolism that's actually quite
Sure.
common in there.
Yes.
And with those UFO images in particular, like I'm thinking of one painting in particular with the Virgin Mary in the middle, and over her left shoulder there's what looks like a UFO in the sky, and just next to her in the background
Of
there's
course.
like a little man with a
Indeed.
dog kind of looking up at the
Yeah.
sky.
So that would be one of them.
That would be one of them, right?
Yeah.
So I don't remember who the artist is or what the name of the painting is, but
Fred.
maybe we can put it up in the links under the video later. But I've seen other paintings that seem to suggest the same motif or the same concept, and in those other paintings, it suddenly becomes much clearer what they're trying to do, and what you see in the other paintings is it's much more clearly rendered that it's like an opening in the sky where you see angels with their wings and stuff,
Mhm.
and they're they're like speaking, or they're sort of sending down some kind of information to the man who's looking up in the sky.
Indeed.
And so when you see these other images, it looks much more like just a classical or a classical representation of a theological kind of element of the biblical story. And when you have these images that look like UFOs, it's just basically a much less clear rendering of that happens to look nowadays like the UFOs.
Yeah. I think you're right on that point. Like we're associating a lot of current mythology to ancient mythology in the form of what we consider to be aliens, and posting it onto ancient theological ideas. Just because something happens to be a recurring theme in different cultures doesn't necessarily mean that it has an extraterrestrial origin, right? It could just be that some cultures shared various ideas. Like that, saying that something occurred in the Bible and also occurred in ancient Sumerian texts and happens in art and whatnot, that isn't evidence.
It's by no means evidence. But I have little interest in what's commonly referred to as ancient astronaut theory. For that very reason, it's very difficult to prove. Having said that, the common read on history that's academically considered valid today is by no means the only reading on ancient history. For example, very recently, a very prominent scholar in Iraq came out and said that the very first spaceport ever was built in ancient Iraq in something like 5000 BC. And apparently there is a certain amount of evidence and ruins. And what I'm trying to express is that the ideas that we are given on antiquity are not necessarily the only theories that are out there.
We'll go on about this Iraq thing. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, this is the cultural or historical minister within Iraq. Sometime in the last several months, one day he held a news conference, a press conference, in which he essentially declared that they've discovered that history's first spaceport or airport was in Iraq, within what is now considered Iraq.
So what is
pre-antiquity?
What is he considered to be an ancient spaceport?
A 7,000-year-old spaceport in Iraq, built by ancient Sumerians.
Thank you. This is what I'm referring to.
Yeah, but what makes him say that?
Well, that's, and once again, we come back to this layman issue and the fact that none of us are actually experts on the subject.
We can be layman about it, but we can also, we all have the capacity to understand and absorb why someone is saying something. And we don't have to be experts on the subject in order to follow along with what he's saying, right?
No, but I mean, to be able to appreciate why he's saying the things he's saying and where the proof or the evidence or the material that would have.
Right, where is he getting this from?
Where's this Iraq's transport?
That's these are all very valid questions, and I wish I was able to answer for you.
He just said it, and
so
I don't. He surely knows what he's talking about. I just don't know.
Do you report it in the Independent?
Do you believe him?
Do I believe him? No, I don't believe him. I don't necessarily disbelieve him. I try to keep an open mind.
That's fair. I don't know enough about the issue, but to me, it just seems somewhat of a leap in logic to say that there was a 7,000-year-old spaceport in what is now considered.
No one's
Iraq.
saying. I certainly don't mean to suggest that there's a 7,000-year-old, or I believe it's 7,000 BC, so it would be more like 9,000 years old at this point. But I don't mean to suggest that there's a 9,000-year-old spaceport in Iraq. I'm just suggesting that there are different reads on history and prehistory than the ones that we as members of Western culture have been indoctrinated to accept as fact.
Phil, I know you've talked to me before about ancient cultures having some sort of knowledge of astronomy that they basically shouldn't have had because we didn't have the visual capacity at that time, I don't think, to see that far into space.
Yeah, this
Do we
is
know anything about that? Or
no, not really that I'd be able to expound on. Unfortunately, no. No. I'm sorry. I wouldn't be able to get into.
Well,
that.
I'm thinking about the stuff that we can see from space, right?
Yes.
That has also been suggested that these are some sort of landing ports and lines that can only be
Like the Nazca lines, for example.
Sure.
Yeah, sure. And once again, apparently the Nazca lines are something that was it the Mayans or the Aztecs?
It would be Mayans.
Yeah. It's the Mayans, anyway.
The Aztecs weren't that far south. They weren't in South America.
Yeah. But this is something that they constructed. These are things that they did to please the gods. Essentially, that's the impression that I'm under.
Right, that's what we understand. Of this stuff.
Yes, indeed. But the stuff I was talking about was it's information that comes up in more esoteric circles, and it ties into this ancient Sumerian theory and stuff. And there's a fairly prominent scholar named Michael Tessarian who was very knowledgeable and who's written about this stuff extensively and lectured about it extensively. And it gets into essentially events that happened in our own solar system, hundreds of thousands, millions of years ago, and I meant to brush up on this last night. I know that there is a huge asteroid belt in our solar system, and I'm trying to believe it's between
the Kuiper Belt.
Yeah, between Mars and Jupiter.
Between Mars and Jupiter, yes. Now, I believe, according to the writings of Michael Tessarian, that asteroid belt, and I might be mistaken here, is the remains of a planet that was once referred to as Tiamat. And Tiamat was destroyed, millions of years ago, according to these writings that Tessarian has been exposed to or studied. And apparently Tiamat would have been destroyed in some ancient galactic battle between these extremely sophisticated races, and I wish that I was able to expound on it more.
Yeah, we don't know anything about the origins of his writing.
Tessarian, well, he's
collecting his information.
Tessarian is very much interested in ancient Sumerian.
Okay, so Sumerians.
So once again, this comes back to the Sumerians, if I'm not mistaken.
Is this planet Tiamat? Is it supposed to have been inhabited?
Absolutely.
and to have had a developed civilization?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So wouldn't we be able to see remnants of the technology and stuff among the debris in that asteroid belt?
I'm just mentioning this as an ancient mythology that exists and that we haven't been indoctrinated to. Once again, is simply stating that there are alternative reads on this stuff, right?
Okay, so just to expound on that a little bit, the Tiamat planet theory was originally put forth by Zachariah Sitchin.
Sitchin, right.
He was born in 1992, blah, 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 raised in Palestine. 1922.
Okay, I was going to say, wow.
Tiamat, as outlined in the Enuma Elish, is a goddess and a monstrous embodiment of primordial chaos. She gives birth to the first generation of gods and later makes war upon them and is split into by the storm god Marduk, who uses her body to form the heavens and the earth. The theory is that this planet was destroyed and formed the Kuiper Belt. Zachariah Sitchin is a renowned conspiracy theorist and ancient astronaut believer.
Coincidentally or not, he apparently is the source for a lot of the Sumerian translations.
Indeed.
That attribute,
but none of us
attribute their mythology to spacemen.
He goes on in this theory to say that there was some kind of monstrous space battle that ended up destroying this planet, thus creating the asteroid belt. which seems to be kind of a stretch in logic again.
Well, once again, I think that you're saying that has limited value because none of us here have actually read Zecharia Sitchin, so we're really not in a position.
Logic is independent of whether or not you read somebody's particular work.
What logic are you referring to here? I mean, you don't have any idea as to what his arguments are, what points he puts across to support his arguments. I mean, you're not able to make any kind of a logical, rational argument because you don't really have the information that he's providing in front of you. You don't know.
You don't need to have it in front of you. I have read some of Sitchin's stuff in the past. That's what you're saying is an unfair assumption. I have read some of Sitchin's stuff, and I found it to be logically inconsistent with reality. To me, there is nothing in what he's writing that's in any way plausible or believable. He doesn't put forward any rational or logically consistent arguments to back up his points. He's just saying that he read this in an ancient Sumerian text and is now saying that there was some battle that destroyed a planet. Where's the evidence to support that?
I would tend to think that he probably provides some, but I have not read Zecharia.
Well, he's
Sitchin
suggesting
myself,
suggesting it's the text he's reading that are his proof.
Sure.
I guess is what we're getting at here. So that's what he's putting forward as his.
But he seems to be the only archaeologist or the only scientist who can read Sumerian who's reading it that way. Most other readers of the cuneiform, I think, is what they wrote, and
I think
they contradict what he says.
And to take a very literate, obviously a very educated man like Zecharia Sitchin, and to simply blow him off as being a quack or whatever, without, anyways, it strikes me. It doesn't strike me as being good science or good. It's
to just say no based on what we know. No,
to just say no. I'm sorry. This information it doesn't match up with what I've been told or what I've been indoctrinated into, and
it's not a matter of indoctrination. I don't see the evidence to support what he's saying.
Yeah, fair enough.
There's a site by Michael Heiser, who's with the Hebrew and Semitic Studies department at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and he's got a website all about Sitchin. He's specifically addressing Sitchin's theories. The website is called sitchiniswrong.com.
Oh, I'm sure there's any number of those websites out there.
Yeah.
No doubt.
But I mean, I guess if you read both Sitchin's material and you can read sources like this too, and you can kind of form an opinion that might be.
Well, so can I say this, though, that it does seem to make more sense that if aliens were to visit Earth, they would have done it before we were technologically advanced.
Well, why?
Well, because now we're putting up a fight and we're going to throw bombs at them and stuff like that. You know what I mean? It just kind of makes sense that they would if they were to touch down, they would touch down. And
you had a UFO experience, right?
Sure.
So you don't actually believe what you're just saying. You believe that there are UFOs, right?
I've seen one. I don't know what it was. Sure, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I just mean that I'm just using my logic now.
Okay. I see.
And I'm thinking it makes a lot of sense that they would have showed up on Earth before we're technologically advanced to start throwing bombs at them. It just kind of makes sense.
Well,
now we're putting up a fight. Now we're annoying.
At the same time, I find it almost convenient for them to show up when we're most likely to not understand what it is or to not have as developed
but hold on, you're under the assumption that they're not speaking with governments and stuff like that now, sort of thing as well, right?
Right. Yeah.
So
just to jump off on what you were saying, there was an episode in particular of Ancient Aliens where the main focus was that these ancient aliens came to Earth during the end of the dinosaur era and wiped them out to make way for the human experiment that they were seeding on.
Oh, really? Interesting.
My favorite theory about the extinction of the dinosaurs is that flowers came about and changed the vegetation, and therefore they lost their food supply, basically, because it was taken over by flowers.
But weren't they carnivorous?
Not necessarily. No, they weren't necessarily. But let's say they were eating the smaller animals that were feeding off plants. That now those plants didn't exist. Those animals died, following suit. But all the other animals died as well, right?
Yeah. Okay. Done. And
but I like that idea though, that flowers killed the dinosaurs.
Flowers killed the dinosaurs. Nice.
So what?
So okay, let's just say it though. Okay, there's no proof.
There's no proof that we have access.
There's no
to
proof, but there's what some people have interpreted as evidence.
As evidence, yeah, and of course there's any number of ancient cave paintings that also show these sort of airborne
figures that we the figures that we see now and can associate that with an analogous image, which is the astronaut or something like that.
Not just the astronaut, but of actually of flying discs or craft or flying saucers themselves. So things they're cave etchings that essentially look like UFOs or flying saucers.
But that goes to just our like how we perceive things, right? There's a lot of projecting that goes into what we actually. Yeah, it's kind of like pareidolia.
What's pareidolia?
That's like our tendency to look for patterns that look like faces.
Right. Like your face looks like a face to me right now.
Right. No, but if you look like at a random pattern. In like wallpaper or something. Right. You're likely to go. You're likely to look around and try to make up faces out of the random blotches as you're looking around.
I got you. What's that called?
Pareidolia.
Pareidolia.
Yeah.
Okay.
And like the mind is evolved to seek out and identify patterns just as a survival instinct, right?
So that seeing things and perceiving things, it's actually like a two-way.
Are we talking Lou Ciccone?
It's actually like a two-way thing happening there in our brains. We're receiving information, but we're also projecting projecting our impression of what it could be. We're kind of running this whole calculation and comparing it to our past experience.
Also eliminating things that we can't understand as well. That's part of the human mind.
Yeah, that too. It's like I think we had mentioned this before about the indigenous populations that were discovered by the explorers, and the indigenous populations themselves are reported not to have seen the ships on the horizon.
I've heard that.
They weren't able. I'm not sure how credible that is.
They don't have the. They just don't have the experiential framework to be able to place that in some kind of context, so they just don't see it. The brain just chooses not to acknowledge it.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing.
So it's an interesting theory.
With psychological, do we have any psychological proof of this phenomenon? Because this can also explain why we're not seeing aliens and why we're not seeing UFOs, and why some people do and some people don't. I mean, there seems to be cases of, and I'm seeing this a lot now in the documentaries about UFOs, where specific people are constantly seeing UFOs for some reason.
Indeed, yeah.
And there also seems to be a suggestion of a psychic link.
Indeed.
And things
well,
like
that's a big part of Stephen Greer's thing is, through the, he's got these things, he calls them the CE5 protocols, or close encounter of the fifth type protocols. And his whole thing is he takes these groups out of the desert and they go out and they like meditate and stuff and try to raise their level of consciousness or awareness or whatever. And the idea is that somehow they are able to like have these little communions with the lights in the sky. I don't know. I think it's, well, anyways, I certainly don't.
What were you going to say?
I don't subscribe to it. I don't personally necessarily subscribe to it, but it's also, my experience neither proves nor disproves it, so I choose to keep an open mind.
Yeah, right.
That's very similar to another organization known as the Typhonian Ordo Templi Orientis, who try to make communion with what they consider to be an extraterrestrial deity using similar methods.
That's Seth?
No. That's another Sethian order or something. But they go out into the desert and meditate and try to make contact.
Well, that's the Ordo Templo Orientis. That's
Aleister Crowley's thing. The Typhonian OTO is a splinter group from that original organization who they took the original teachings of Aleister Crowley and interpreted it using a modern alien figure instead of the the Lamb figure, Lam, that Crowley set out, who dictated the Book of the Law to him.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know what. So yeah, very similar in a way to what Stephen Greer was proposing with the C5 methods.
Fair enough.
Yeah, what do you guys think?
But Crowley was pretty explicitly kind of thinking about a satanic.
No, not at all.
No, not satanic is very much the interpretation that society and culture of that time, chose to sort of.
I thought he was explicitly invoking
No.
demons.
He was just seen as being satanic, an anti-Catholic, anti-Christian, or practicing or pursuing values that were inherently.
Because he was like running a cult and everything, wasn't he? Like,
not quite. No,
so all of my information about this guy is wrong.
He established the Abbey of Thelema in Cefalù, Sicily, in order to.
Get laid a lot.
To experiment with drugs a lot, and to just kind of
good time.
Right, but that was pretty much a classic cult. He set up like this commune kind of thing.
But
where he attracted people that he wouldn't say no to sexually.
The whole idea of the Abbey of Thelema was to give his quote unquote followers an opportunity to explore the law of Thelema, or
his penis.
No, to try to find their true will or their true purpose in life, which necessitated just complete freedom.
Complete freedom, yeah, right.
That was the idea behind it. The reason why it was shut down was because somebody drank bad water and died, and they got expelled from Italy during the rise of fascism.
Also, it was a huge property that had totally gone to shit. They hadn't been maintaining it, and it was, and
they were too busy.
And all the locals thought it was haunted and thought that they were doing, there was all kinds of local sort of rumors, and it was bad. See, the locals wanted them gone.
Right,
they were definitely
shunned
being
and
shunned.
called a Satanist when he wasn't a Satanist.
First opportunity,
he was a hedonist, definitely.
He was definitely
a hedonist. Okay, yeah.
A lot of what he wrote was misinterpreted, just because he was an iconoclast. He labeled himself as the Beast 666 just to get a rise out of people.
Okay, so there's that
that's
association then, right?
I guess that's where I'm getting it from. Like, he was saying himself that he's a Satanist, or that.
No, he never called himself a Satanist. He called himself the Beast 666 or Baphomet, and he kept that image of himself because it got attention. It drew a lot of attention to him, and he was.
So you're just saying he was a troll.
He was a troll. He was a Victorian troll, in a way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What year was he around, Aleister Crowley?
He was born in late 1800s, died in 1947.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure. I thought he lived a little later.
He died in 47? Yeah.
Poor and sad and bummed out, I'm pretty sure. Eh? Like, he died a lonely, penniless bastard.
Yeah. How do we get on this?
No. Not sure.
Aleister Crowley?
Ancient aliens.
Ancient aliens.
All right, ancient aliens. Okay, so there's no proof.
But we were talking about Stephen Greer.
Oh, right. That was
okay.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Well, other than there being proof, though, do we all admit it is a possibility?
That what? What's a possibility?
That ancient aliens have come to Earth.
How about the old missing link theory?
Which missing link theory?
Somehow that there was a one phase of human evolution where we evolved from being the Cro-Magnon or the prehistoric man into the technologized sort of think about Arthur C. Clarke's take on it.
Right.
Space Odyssey. It's this obelisk that comes down and somehow imparts this knowledge somehow.
The pre-civilized primates smashing.
Exactly.
Suddenly tools are being used.
Exactly.
I think there's a pretty clear archaeological delineation of the evolution of tool making and tool usage.
I'm sure there is.
Well, is there still a missing link? Is that still a
well,
no, there is no missing link anymore.
Most biologists won't. Most biologists think that will say that there's no missing link, where we're constant, like all of the fossil record that we have is just a big long series of links that are all there. They're not missing.
Evolution is it's a long and drawn out process. There's no there's no, at this point you became Homo erectus. At this point now you're like Homo sapiens.
Of course.
Well, okay, so
these are transformations that happen over thousands, probably hundreds,
millions,
kind of
millions,
unfathomable scales
Over
of
a
time.
period of time.
It happens like in minute kind of incremental developmental stages, right? There's no, like I said just recently, there's no at this point this happened and then.
Is it not, okay, archaeologically though, is it not a phenomenon that basically if they don't know how to place something, they just don't talk about it? Is this not a thing that
that would be the scientific approach, is to say, okay, we don't know what the answer to this particular thing is, but we don't, but scientifically you wouldn't project a speculation.
No, but they also
that
just wouldn't reveal it. If it doesn't actually fit in, it's actually hidden in terms of knowledge.
Sure.
We have no knowledge of it. So even if there was proof, we wouldn't actually even know.
No, if it
didn't fit in, let's say they found some sort of advanced technology, but they're looking at it going, how could this be? This is from 2 million years ago. It would be just stored away and not talked about.
I don't think that's true.
Is this not the case?
No. Like if they make a discovery, they say we found this, but
we have
don't
this
know
thing
what
and
it
we
is
don't
yet.
know what it is yet.
And there are a couple of objects like that.
Mm-hmm.
There are things that have been found.
Like the Antikythera?
And once again, I'm bringing this stuff up without really being able to refer to it specifically, sadly. I know that there's one, my goodness gracious, there's something that was, I think it was uncovered in North Africa, and it's, God damn it. It's some type of an ancient contraption that shows a level of craftsmanship. And it's a system of gears, and
it's a
computer thing that I think had to do with keeping track of the constellations, the movements
and
of
eclipses
stars.
and things like that.
Yeah.
I think that's the Antikythera.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Our vision of the sky would have been much better back then without light pollution as well. So we would have been seeing a lot more of the sky too.
Yeah. My main problem with the ideas of ancient aliens kind of, or aliens coming to ancient humans and giving them some kind of technology or things like this, is that when we look archaeologically at human development, it just seems like by by the Occam's razor, there's much simpler explanations for the technology that we do see. Like most of the ruins and things that we find, as far as I know, all of the ruins that we find are made of materials that existed at the time in those areas or adjacent areas.
There's nothing anachronistic.
And they were worked with tools and technology that existed at the time too. So even though we don't know exactly how they went about constructing their buildings or making their tools or things like that, even if we lack some details there, it's a much larger leap to say that it was aliens that came and gave some fantastic technology to do it, rather than to say, we have some analogous civilizations that did it this way and with these kind of tools, and there's some evidence peppered here and there that kind of shows that they could feasibly have done it themselves. Right. So it just seems it's just an Occam's razor kind of thing.
Right. So no presentation of proof once again, or anything like that. Sure.
I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing anachronistic in anything that ancient civilizations have built or constructed or used as a tool or constructed as a temple or whatever you want to call it. Everything is clearly, you can see the development of tool making, for example, from the moment we just started throwing rocks at things to then building projectiles or spears, and then the first metalwork started occurring. Like you can see tools develop throughout. Yeah, you can see the progression throughout history. So, like you were saying, I think it's a bit of a leap to say that aliens came in at one point and kind of sparked our understanding of how to do things, or gave us a kind of a push to develop in a certain way or another.
Because it just seems at least as likely that we could have made that discovery.
I think it seems a little more likely.
That's why I say at least as.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But what I find interesting is with everything that exists in popular culture today around this issue, around this topic of UFOs, is that we're getting hung up on ancient history when the thing is actually happening right now. And that's very much what I believe. And I don't listen. I don't necessarily even believe in extraterrestrial visitation, but there are things happening on the Earth right now. People are seeing crafts that completely defy our common understanding of aerodynamics and how flight is achieved. Essentially, there very much seems to be.
That's true.
Technology that is operating according to a completely different paradigm.
Yeah, there are people reporting UFOs all the time. I find it. I'm not. I might be wrong, but it doesn't seem like there's that many more people that are recording or taking pictures of UFOs or things like that now than there was like 30 years ago.
I think there is.
Before everybody had a phone in their pocket.
There's a lot more video evidence.
Isn't that problematic?
There's a lot of video.
There is a lot of video evidence. There's a lot more video evidence out now than there was, say, 20
is there,
or 30
really?
or
Yeah.
40
Well,
years
even
ago.
the NASA
Let me just put the
Like, why isn't YouTube just
It is
nothing
loaded. It is loaded with
nothing but
UFO stuff.
But let me just
so
put the
much
question
stuff
out
on
there.
YouTube.
Yeah.
People are reporting seeing weird craft and unexplainable aerial phenomenon. What do you guys think that is? What do you think people are seeing?
Forget about what people are seeing. We can talk about what people are saying, what people are coming out of the military-industrial complex are actually saying about these projects that are being pursued, these so-called unacknowledged special access projects. And there's some very interesting, some very word I'm looking for. Anyway, certainly some very. They seem to be working on some very advanced technology. Absolutely, some very sophisticated technology. Absolutely.
But do you not think we're able to come up with that technology on our own?
We could be. Yeah, absolutely, we could be. Absolutely, we could be. But that's what I think is. This whole story of alien visitation and stuff. I think you have to consider the possibility that phenomenon is currently being used as an extremely effective means of counterintelligence and disinformation. So if you have this very technology that's very very rare, if you can somehow get the population to recognize it as being something extraterrestrial or other than human, the potential for false flag attacks and that kind of thing becomes a lot. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here, but there are a lot of people who've come forward out of the military-industrial complex, if you will, who have come forward about their knowledge of these various programs and stuff. And there's a lot of people. These are very credible people. People like and I know I'm not just talking about people who have seen UFOs, but people who've had experience. I think of guys, the old astronauts, the old Mercury astronauts like Gordon Cooper, and the other astronaut who died very recently past year. Sorry?
John Glenn?
No, not John Glenn, no. But John Glenn had his own experiences with strange phenomena.
He claimed he had seen UFOs?
Well, not UFOs per se, or at least no. For John Glenn, it was these luminescent types of entities that apparently swarmed around his capsule.
Orbs and stuff like that?
Yeah, these luminescent orbs. Yeah,
the little orbs. He's a little orb guy.
These little sprites or whatever that surrounded his capsule. But no, I'm thinking of, and of course, this is all stuff that I know. But when I'm talking to people about it, for whatever reason, I have a hard time.
It's like going to the record store. You don't know what you want. Once you get in there.
Exactly. But yeah, there were a number of certainly a number of astronauts, of American astronauts and Russian cosmonauts who've spoken very openly about their experiences with these phenomena, and they've spoken very openly about the fact that there is an organized effort within, for example, within the American government and military complex to suppress this information.
Have other countries not stepped forward?
Absolutely. Well, the French released the Cometa report.
And so what does that entail?
Is it the Cometa report? The
Anyone
French
know
put
about
out?
it? Anyone?
The French put out a dossier,
A dossier, no less.
a very detailed dossier of the information that they had officially collected on these phenomenon, and I believe it's called the Cometa report.
Yeah, MI6 released their information as well.
Well, no, but there's still a lot of documents that are being held by MI6 they were supposed to be released.
British intelligence.
They were supposed to be released late 2016, and then they held on to the documents at the last minute and said that they had to look over them. That there was some more redaction that needed to be done. But there's a significant batch of documents that will be coming from MI6 in the coming year, I would imagine.
I find this whole thing.
Project Blue Book. That was
no. The Project Blue Book is a glorified public relations effort on the part of the American military. The guy who is running Blue Book is a guy named. He was the guy who ran Blue Book. He's the guy who originally came up with this explanation of swamp gas. He'd once suggested that a particular mass UFO sighting in the United States.
So this was more of a debunking effort?
It was very much a debunking effort. And he came out later, the man who was in charge and whose name I know very well and I can't access right now, who had headed up Project Blue Book. And he came out later after the conclusion of Project Blue Book as one of the great proponents for UFO visitation and the existence of these crafts, and himself became quite a believer, a true believer. But while he was working for Blue Book, he was definitely under a lot of pressure to explain everything away. And the cases they couldn't explain away, they would remove from Blue Book records, and they would keep their own separate records of those cases. So certain cases were omitted from official Blue Book records. And it started long before Blue Book. There was the first one, if I'm not mistaken, was Project Sign. Project Sign morphed into Project Grudge.
Right.
Then Grudge ultimately morphed into Blue Book, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's what it looks like here on my Wikipedia there.
I find it.
But these were public relations efforts. This is just a way to get the public to shut up about this stuff, that they could explain it away. And
I find it fascinating that all these efforts are being made from foreign intelligence agencies and even, in some way, American and Canadian intelligence agencies to release this information. I just don't know what it is that we're seeing. And in the absence of evidence one way or another, my default position is I don't know. To quote the X-Files, I want to believe, because it would be a game changer. I think we mentioned this during our first episode, but it would be an absolute game changer in terms of human civilization if people were to reveal suddenly that there is another civilization or many other civilizations out there, and they are in regular contact with us.
Well, do you know that just this past summer, Jean-Claude Juncker, who is one of the big honchos of the European Union, when addressing the Congress of Europe, whether it's a Congress or the Senate or whatever, the governing body of the legislative body of the European Union, he, without batting an eye, he addressed his cohorts. He said that when discussing the Brexit, he had spoken to heads of other planets who had said that they are very concerned about the direction that Europe is heading in at that time. Now, here's what's interesting, okay? Sure. And you can bring this up right now. He says it in French.
YouTube.
You can bring it up on YouTube.
I've seen it. It's true.
He says it very clearly, les chiffres d'autres planètes. He says it very clearly. He does not make any effort whatsoever to correct himself. But this could easily be explained away as being just he
meant other countries.
Not a single mainstream news organization from the planet touched this story. Nobody, not a little story, not even a little blurb at the end of the newsreel. Oh, here's what crazy old Jean-Claude Juncker had to say today. Nobody fucking touched this thing. Nobody touched it.
Isn't that weird, though? That is very strange.
That's kind of weird.
Not,
yeah.
You know? Like, even as a joke, like, hey, check out what happened, what someone mistakenly said.
I guess.
It's
nobody
not covered.
touched it.
It's just on YouTube.
And you can look this up. You'll see the clips on YouTube, but no official mainstream news organization attempted to discuss this happening. It was just swept under the carpet like it never happened.
Have you seen it, Mark?
I have not seen it. I have to look at that.
It's pretty good.
That's weird.
I found it very interesting. I found it strangely compelling. And then there's all kinds of stuff out there. There's all kinds of stuff out there that would suggest that there's something going on with this. So that's just one, that's one example. And then you've got obviously.
Okay, but wait a minute. Why you're saying nothing? But I mean, I just wanted to find the video that you said was up there. But there's all kinds of hits on Google talking about it.
Yeah, but from mainstream news organizations.
Right, so the people are talking about it.
People are talking about it. No mainstream news. The Associated Press
you're right.
never touched it. Reuters never touched it. No one touched it,
any
man.
mainstream media
No
on
mainstream
the
news organization whatsoever fucking touched this thing. They didn't go anywhere near it. And that's even to joke or to poke fun or anything, man.
How recently was this?
That was this past summer.
It was right before the Brexit incident.
In June.
It was while the
Brexit
Brexit discussions were occurring.
Absolutely. Well, if I were just to entertain this for a little while, if I were an alien from another civilization who happened to glance upon Earth,
like you're not,
like I'm not, yeah, I would be concerned about the direction that certain countries
absolutely.
are taking.
There's the whole Roswell thing having happened in '47. They're very much the common understanding within the field of ufology is that when we discovered atomic weapons, that's when somehow we really popped up on the map at that point. Somehow they were like, oh, the kids have discovered the matches kind of thing, right. and got very concerned. And that's when we started experiencing this whole influx of
it's like the Prime Directive. At some point we start to develop warp technology, and that's when other civilizations are able to come in and say, "Hey, we're out here.
Yes,
now that you can travel to the stars,
we'll talk to you.
Now we'll talk." I think this was on another episode of Ancient Aliens, but there's a theory out there that Earth is currently being isolated until we can, develop socially enough to be able to join the intergalactic communion or community. So, what do you guys think of that? Do you think there is a possibility that there is a confederation of alien civilizations that we are purposefully being left out of?
I do. Actually, I do. I think that's why Luke brought me, is because he knows.
True. I carried him. I carried him over in my sack.
Because this is very much within the field, within the community of ufology as it is today. And if you listen to our former Minister of Defense, Paul Hellyer speaking, and he's very much a proponent of this theory. Right. He's apparently that there are elements within Earth governments that have been communicated with, who have communicated. There's a very common theory that President Eisenhower met with elements of an extraterrestrial contingent at Edwards Air Force Base in 1954, and that they actually had a little conference of some kind at that time, a little meeting of the minds, so to speak, between the Eisenhower administration and an extraterrestrial concern.
Mm-hmm.
And this is very common. This has been written about, which doesn't make it true by any means, but it is an idea and a theory that is very much out there. And so, relating to this,
is the idea that we're being basically incubated.
Very much so.
Yes. And if that's the case, does that mean that we would see some kind of intervention before something ultimately catastrophic could happen?
Essentially, I think that's the idea. Essentially, is that ETs supposedly are here to help guide us into this next phase of our development, and to see to it that we don't just because the next 100 years on this planet are going to be very key insofar as whether humanity is able to move forward
to survive
our own
Trump
technological. Our own technological adolescence, if you will.
Well, certainly, yeah. Within the next 30 years will be even more important, considering that we've already reached or gone beyond the carbon dioxide atmospheric tipping point.
Yeah, global warming is the thing that
we have fucked ourselves, and if aliens are going to intervene, now would be a good time to do it.
Absolutely. But here's a very common concern that I hear within the field of ufology is that these technologies, like any other technology, have as much potential for bad as they do for good. That's one of the reasons they're not just coming forward with this technology and saying, "Hey, wait, look, we have 0-point energy and we can draw, these tremendous amounts of energy out of the very fabric of the cosmos." That obviously there's tremendous potential for weaponizing technology.
But if climate change is something that's a direct threat to human civilization,
yes,
as a whole, and like that particular example of the 0-point energy,
yes,
if that's available to replace our current sources of energy, which are direct causes of climate change, which is a direct threat to civilization, why wouldn't they?
Well, then you get into your heavy conspiracy theory and your Georgia Guidestone stuff, and this whole idea that they want to reduce the human population on the planet, get it down to somewhere like around 500 million. Is an idea that's out there. It's one conspiracy theory, and then part of it is that, insofar as why they're not introducing this 0-point energy is that there's, our whole economic paradigm right now, where our whole economic infrastructure is set up around these various industries, the oil and gas industry, the coal industry, if you were to simply introduce a technology that would render these various industries, these various modes of getting energy obsolete overnight, tremendous sectors, economic sectors, financial sectors would collapse, and it would, essentially.
Yeah, who's to know they haven't done it, and we just went, that's fine, tuck that away, hide that shit. You know what I mean?
And of course, when there's financial concerns, of course, there are major concerns who profit tremendously from coal power, from nuclear power, from petrochemicals, and from the fuel, from the oil industry.
Well, is it not common knowledge that the technology does exist? We're just not going towards it. Am I wrong here? Like, we don't have to be using
renewables like wind, solar.
But I mean, is there not a history of like that whole who killed the electric car and all that bullshit?
Absolutely,
of course, evidence of people having been killed in like the 50s and 60s because they created cars that ran on water and stuff like that.
Yeah, but that can pretty easily just be attributed to the vested economic interests.
Yeah,
the earlier industries.
Yes.
I've read a lot about all of those conspiracy theories surrounding, governments hiding alien technology, and the Eisenhower meeting that you were talking about.
Yeah.
As much as I want that to be true, again, I'm going the route of the skeptic because that's what I do, but I don't see any evidence to support it.
Yeah, I don't know. When you've got guys like Gordon Cooper and Edgar Mitchell and,
who are these guys, though?
So Gordon Cooper and Edgar Mitchell were both prominent astronauts, and they're by no means the only. How about Neil Armstrong's cryptic little remark at the 25th anniversary of the Apollo landing at the White House, where he gets all misty-eyed and he's addressing this group of young kids, and he talks about removing truth's protective layer. Those of you who will be able to look behind truth's protective layer. Now, there's a very common story that Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin and Ed White, when they were on the moon, apparently there were transmissions that were done on a separate NASA channel that were picked up by ham radio operators and stuff, various people on Earth, where, Armstrong was saying, yeah, like they're here, they're watching us, and these babies are huge. And people have overheard Neil Armstrong talk at various functions, not officially, not to the press, but to other people who were there, like, yeah, they were there, they saw us and they were not happy about us being there. And unofficially, apparently, this is what Armstrong has said. Unofficially, they were there, and that the moon was not good. Like, we were very much given the impression that they did not approve of our presence there. That was the impression that Armstrong was given. And numerous people have talked about Neil Armstrong's.
Have you heard this?
Comments about
these recordings?
No, I haven't. To my knowledge, there are no recordings that exist.
See, and that's my problem. It's the inability to verify the claims that are being made that raises a red flag.
Well, when you have a huge governmental organization that has a concerted effort to suppress this information.
Doesn't that just seem a little convenient, though? Like, it just. There are no.
You ever watch the NASA live feed?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, and they do cut it off every now and then. People always go to, like, they spotted a UFO, turn off the feed. That's not the case. They shut the feed off periodically just to switch cameras.
Yeah, and it's just every time some weird little whatchamacallit comes into frame, blue screen.
But to say that whatever streak went across the screen as a UFO is a total leap in
more than streaks, though. I mean, these are more than streaks.
These are more than streaks. The most
recent one was pretty
damn good footage.
But we do not know what we're seeing.
We're seeing UFOs and we're calling it a UFO. We don't know what it is.
That's where it should end, though. We do not know what that is. And unfortunately, what ends up happening is conspiracy theorists will jump on this as evidence to back up what they're saying, whereas in reality, we do not know. We don't know the origin of whatever it is that caused this streak to go across the camera feed. We don't know.
It's a gap-reliant theory rather than...
Yeah, it's the God of the gaps argument, right? Yeah, just because you don't understand what it was doesn't necessarily make it an extraterrestrial craft.
Of course, yeah, but I mean, you see this kind of thing happen so many times. I mean, once or twice, fair enough, it's a coincidence, but I mean, this happens all the time. I mean, practically any time if you're watching the ISS feed and you see some weird little thing you come into frame, within a couple of seconds they cut to blue screen. It happens every fucking time. Sure, it happens often.
It happens often, but what is it?
It doesn't. No, I mean, and of course. Let's say you did have an ISS. I mean, let's say you're the United States government, and let's say some weird fucking alien ship were to just pop out right next to the ISS. That's not necessarily something that you would want the entirety of humanity to know about, in real time. Like, that could lead to some real problems.
Of course. But again,
who's making the decision though not to
the cut decisions?
Yeah, not to reveal certain information like this, or
are you talking about the NASA? Because in that case, it's NASA cutting off the live feed kind of thing.
What I'm saying is that if there's like political leaders, and we all know how political leaders become political leaders. You just have regular frigging people who get voted into office or buy their way into office, and none of them are much wiser than any other human being. And I'm just wondering, like, if these people are making these kinds of decisions to hide certain information because of some kind of noble idea of wanting to protect the integrity of civilization And they seem to have some wisdom, knowing that if we were exposed to this information, everything would fall apart.
I don't think it shows any wisdom. It's more of a power thing.
Within the intelligence community, there are efforts that are started. Now, you have a new administration coming in every 4 years, okay? So you could be totally going back to the drawing board every 4 years. Every time a new new administration comes in, then they say, "Oh no, we don't like what you're doing. We don't like these programs that you guys are running. We want you to shut those down. We're going to start doing things our way." That's not how it works. Efforts are set in motion, okay, within the intelligence community. Programs are set in motion, and over which various governments and administrations are not necessarily given any legislative control, okay? And that's just because these are things that are essentially happening sub rosa. They're happening outside of the official governmental structure, okay? They're set up, their efforts, their initiatives that are set out independently of the government. They're trans-governmental. Do you understand? Essentially, they're governmental efforts that are being funded by government money, but that are not subject to any type of governmental oversight. And that seems to be what's happening in the United States with these unacknowledged special access projects. They don't give various administrations access to this knowledge because they can't take the risk of having to go back to the drawing board every 4 years or every time a new president or a new philosophy comes in. So there are these efforts that are set in motion and that are governed by another level of government. Bill Clinton once said,
I was just going to bring
there's
that
a
up.
government within the government, and I have no control over them.
He wanted to. People were speculating that Clinton was going to be the quote-unquote disclosure president, and he was asked about the UFO file, and he said, "I can't get to it." So
And he'd been provided with briefing materials by Stephen Greer. He'd been extensively briefed by Stephen Greer on the subject, but he couldn't get any official. In fact, when Jimmy Carter came in, he'd spoken to George Herbert Walker Bush, and because George Bush had apparently some access, had been granted some access.
Head of the CIA at the time.
He was head of the CIA, but certain CIA heads have not been wedded.
yeah,
But yeah, Jimmy Carter's people approached Bush about it. He was just straight up, I'm not going to divulge this information. I wish I could find this proper quotes, but he refused
To talk about it.
to talk about it with the incoming administration.
yeah. I don't know what we're seeing. I don't know what these special access programs are really all about. It's very easy to, if you're already invested in the UFO story, to say that it's a special access program. They have no government oversight. So it has to be a UFO program. And that's, there it is. It's glaring in the face. But in the absence of evidence, once again, the default position should be I do not know. Right? We don't have access to all the information, so we can't necessarily jump to the conclusion that what we're seeing is a UFO cover-up conspiracy.
You're right, and I don't think that we do jump to that conclusion. I mean, I'm talking about the four of us.
I have.
You have jumped.
Very much, yeah. I believe that the technology exists, it's being suppressed. I don't believe that it's necessarily extraterrestrial in origin.
Right, okay.
But I believe the technology exists and that it is being suppressed.
So what technology do you think exists?
Anti-gravity, I guess.
Okay.
Electrogravitics.
Like the ability to move through space speedy fast and
switch directions. They talk about the potential for trans-dimensional technology, essentially. So they're not supraluminal. They are trans-dimensional.
So H.P. Lovecraft kind of stuff, right?
Well, no, I mean
portals to other dimensions.
Yeah, basically they travel. Yeah, but kind of.
The amount of energy required to create a stable wormhole would be astronomical. We would need enough power from multiple stars in order to create a.
Have you seen that spiral? The video of that crazy spiral in the way.
No, that thing.
Up.
Yeah, that was
weird.
Yeah, and I do not believe that it was some Russian ballistic missile that went off course in the atmosphere and started spinning around. Or
So
whatever.
what is this footage?
It's this weird and it's happened a couple times since.
It looks like
you
you see like what looks like a contrail go up into the sky,
Okay.
and then
no, there's no
and then
contrail. There's no straight contrail, and then you see a spiral. It's just a fucking spiral, man. There's no straight contrail. There's no place where it goes straight corkscrew. It's just a corkscrew.
Okay.
At least the ones I've seen. I've never seen anything where there was any kind of a straight contrail that
Because there's like in the image, there seems to be like
A straight trail as well?
like a
tail.
It's like it's coming from the ground, like the lighter part of the image. There's like a conical kind of structure, and it looks like it almost looks like a spotlight from the ground to the sky. But then in that spotlight, you see like this spiral happen.
Okay.
To get back to the point I was trying to make, it's theoretically possible for that technology to exist, but the amount of energy required to open up a trans-dimensional portal would be astronomical unless we have access to zero-point energy.
Well, also, I mean, we're talking about the possibility of harnessing power, and the power is there. The suns and stars, and I shouldn't say suns. Sun is a star, but I mean, our sun's also a small star, is it not?
Mm-hmm.
And there's, I mean, other. What is this?
I think this is the spiral. Okay, this one here that I'm seeing, there does seem to be absolutely something coming up from the ground.
Yeah, it's coming up from the ground.
So
This is very circular. Wow.
This isn't the one I was referring to, though.
That looks really cool.
wish everyone listening could see this. Maybe
we can
post a link.
We'll tack this on the link.
We'll tack it on.
No, I mean, it's very circular patterns.
Yeah,
it's
right.
pretty.
Anyway, so I guess to wrap things up, let's bring it back to the original question. Do you think it's possible that aliens visited us during our ancient prehistory and influenced our collective evolution?
If you're saying, is it possible? I would say absolutely it's possible.
Sure, I would go. Yeah,
possible.
Man. Sure, it's possible. Is it likely? I don't know. Is it possible? Sure.
Sure. Okay, let's go with likely then. How likely would that be? Yeah, I like the likelihood question better because that's a little bit more empirical.
Because then you can say no.
Then I can say no. How likely is it?
I mean, I don't find any of the evidence compelling that I'm presented with.
This is the one.
Yeah.
I have no clue. I mean, really, I don't know. I can't talk about likeliness or anything like that. Possibility, sure. Yeah. Likeliness, I have no clue. Really, I don't know. I mean, we're a speck in space, man. Like, really, are we that interesting? You know, probably not. You know, I don't know.
Maybe for entertainment value, but
I have no clue.
Is it possible? Sure, could be possible. Is it likely? Probably not. That's my stance on it.
Mm-hmm.
I can't speak in terms of
I
likeliness.
think personally, I don't, as far as the ancient astronaut theory goes, I would tend to agree. I mean, I certainly haven't seen any evidence that would really convince me that this is necessarily something that happened. Now, insofar as anti-gravity technology currently being a thing that is being pursued and developed, I believe that this is whether this comes from extraterrestrials is a mystery. We don't know.
What you're saying is you're an absolute believer in some sort of a UFO technology that we are not aware of, and it's here now.
Absolutely.
You're absolute. It's for sure there.
I'm convinced. Yeah, okay. I am convinced. I am absolutely.
What do you guys think of that?
I don't know. I mean, it is theoretically possible that these technologies do exist, just based on advances in quantum physics and our understanding of different sources of energy and whatnot. Sure, I don't know at the moment. I don't know one way or another, and until I'm presented with evidence, I will remain skeptical.
Yeah, but what if there is an organized effort to keep you from seeing that evidence? I mean, what if some of the world's most powerful organizations have a concerted effort to make sure that evidence never finds its way to us, the general public?
Isn't there an idea though that the more people that are required for a conspiracy, the less likely that conspiracy?
Yeah, we
Do you
don't
know
know
how
that
many people? Do you know how many people worked on the atomic bomb? Tens of thousands of people. They had to build entire fucking cities, secret little cities out in the middle of the desert. None of that ever leaked. Do you understand? It is possible to organize these efforts and to have them leak proof. It is possible. It can be done. And dude, as far as leaks go, leaks happen all the time. People come out with this stuff. There are all kinds of whistleblowers on this issue. There's any number of videos up on the CSETI archives that you can watch, and people who have exposure and knowledge of these programs, and these are very credible people. Some of them are kept anonymous, don't want to reveal their names, their identities. A lot of them are actually are totally, absolutely reveal their names, their identities.
Yeah, no, that it is true that people come out and say this all the time. However, my problem with it is none of what they're saying is independently verifiable. That's my issue. Until we're able to verify what they're saying, then I cannot believe it.
Why aren't any of these kinds of whistleblowers like an Edward Snowden type of whistleblower, where they actually come out and whistleblow with something to show for it?
That's my point exactly.
Yeah, certainly it's a valid question, but what would you want them to bring out?
What can they
something other than their voice?
Yeah, like I said, something independently verifiable, something tangible that backs up their story. Because I
don't know why any of them would actually bother blowing the whistle if they didn't have that in their pocket. Yeah. It makes me wonder where their mind is at.
It makes me question their credibility.
Well, it could be just for sanity's sake. It's like seeing a car accident. You want to get stuff out if you've seen something.
Yeah, but the difference
is you need to talk about.
The difference is though, if you're talking about a car accident, you have the car accident to point to say this happened.
The person you're telling about the car accident is not the person that's seen the accident. That person has no evidence of the car accident, but what you're telling.
I think I'm
like what I mean is if I see a car accident, I'm alone driving. I go home. I tell Gilles, my lover, that I have now seen a car accident.
Wait,
he has not seen
me, your lover?
Sure.
Okay.
But then you can independently verify that the accident happened by checking out news stories about it. You can talk to other people who were involved in the accident. You can see the wreckage of the car.
You know what? The UFO crash at Kecksburg, for example. Look up the UFO crash at Aztec. UFO crash at Roswell, sure. But there are plenty of people who are witness to the Kecksburg incident, plenty of people who are witnesses to the Aztec incident. There's all kinds of information that comes out of these. There's a massive concerted effort to quash or to suppress this information, but a lot of information comes out. It doesn't make its way into the mainstream. You're not going to see it on MSNBC.
It doesn't matter whether or not it's on mainstream media. It has to be independently verifiable. It has to be something tangible. It has to be there's a certain burden of proof that has to be met in order for something to be considered a fact. And just because somebody is saying something doesn't make it so.
We send people to the we put people, or no, we don't have the death sentence, but some countries commit people to die based on eyewitness testimony. So obviously, eyewitness testimony is deemed as having some value. But that
doesn't prove anything, though. Eyewitness testimony on its own doesn't stand. It doesn't meet the burden of proof.
Fair enough, but if you get enough people coming forward and saying the same thing, you have to start. Considering.
No, you don't. Hold on a second. Just because a lot of people see something doesn't make it true. Right? Just because a lot of people witness something, they could all be misinterpreting what it is they're witnessing. And just because you have 10,000 people saying they saw something doesn't mean what they saw actually happened.
Mark, if every person on Earth has had a conversation, had dinner, and had sexual intercourse with an alien, and came to you and told you about it, and you're the only person on Earth that is not, would you believe it?
What? What?
I'm just saying, if every single person on Earth approached you and said, "You know what? We've seen it. I've seen it. Have you seen it?" And we're all talking.
What are you saying?
The whole world. Well, I gave you an example of an alien.
Well,
we're all having lunch with aliens, you're not.
Let's roll with your weird example of all these people having sex with an alien, right?
Sure.
How do you know it was an alien?
Well, I mean,
How does everyone on Earth
we could
know
say
that
because they have 7 arms and 5 eyes, and they've
So?
showed us planets and the technology, and
Could be
we've
a
seen
mutant.
all this stuff.
You don't know. Like, you need to, like, just because...
You're talking about the nature of knowledge right now.
No, I'm
Like,
talking about
you're
the
talking-
burden of proof. I'm talking about the burden of proof that has to be met in order for something
Well,
to be
this is what I'm
considered a
saying.
valid fact.
So what I'm saying is that your proof is based on what you would
It's
see,
not- no,
and
it's-
if you were to see it, then you would believe it.
No, it's not a matter of seeing something. It's something that you have to be able to independently verify what it is that you're claiming as fact, right? That's just pure, simple logic. That's all it is.
So if somebody that you considered credible were to come out and say, "Oh, this is a thing, and I've got a couple of guys behind me who are willing to back up the fact that this is
true,
indeed
it's
a
true."
thing,"
Well, define
It's still just-
credibility. Define credibility on its own. Like, why is it that they're credible? Is it because they have what is?
Well, that's what I'm asking you. Who would you find to be credible?
Yeah, what's
who would you
credible?
consider? What would you consider to be acceptable proof?
I don't know. Because, as Carl Sagan said, with extraordinary claims comes extraordinary... if you're going to make an extraordinary claim, you need extraordinary evidence to back it up.
What was is this, who did you say? Arthur C. Clarke?
Carl Sagan.
Carl Sagan.
There's
Okay.
all kinds of conspiracy theories about Sagan too, because at some point he did a complete 180 because there was earlier on in his career he was very open to this possibility of UFOs and of extraterrestrial visitation, and these were things that he was very much open to.
Okay.
But at some point throughout his career, the mind just, or somehow he just, his attitude on the subject just makes a reel about.
And he
About
no
that
longer
face.
spoke of it, or
here's
spoke
the thing.
against it,
Here's
or what?
the same thing happened to me. I was 100% convinced that UFOs and aliens were an actual thing. What changed my mind was an absence of evidence. That's it. End of story. I haven't been able... It's like the story of God. So far, none of the God claims have been able to meet that burden of proof. The same applies to UFOs. The same applies to fairies. The same applies to Bigfoot, to the Loch Ness Monster, to ghosts, to supernatural powers, to all of that. None of those claims have been able to meet the burden of proof in order for you to be...
Yeah, see, I find that compelling too. Like the idea that I started off believing these things without having sufficient evidence, and then as time goes on and that evidence never actually comes up, then I start to drop these beliefs. When the thing is, you should only be adopting conclusions or beliefs of this nature based on a sufficient amount of evidence.
My point exactly.
I'm still wondering
So I
what this
shouldn't have
evidence
had it
could
to begin
possibly
with.
even look like,
I
or
shouldn't
what
have had to drop
what it would be, what the evidence could possibly be. Like basically.
Well, that's the thing. Like, just like the evidence for God, it would have to be some... I don't know what would convince me. Like, I don't know. But so far, what I've seen hasn't.
Well, that makes sense because God doesn't exist. So
But-
yeah, no, that just makes sense.
Anyway, so far we're going on our longest episode ever, so I think now would be a good point to wrap it up. Yeah, this has been a fascinating discussion. Phil, thank you very much for
Phil,
being
you brought
here.
a lot of new information that I'll have fun looking up.
Thanks, it was a good time.
It was
Thanks
great.
for having me.
So this has been Critical Junction episode 9. I'm Mark.
Well, I'm Luke.
I'm Jill.
As always, thanks for listening, and we will catch you again next time.
Phil's Phil.
Hi.